Welcome, everyone. Hey, Thor, how's it going? All right, so we're gonna have some fun today. Uh, this is going to be a really cool workshop in collaboration with Supabase. And yeah, we're gonna show you how to set up Sentry, how to set up Sentry in Next.js, and then how to set up Supabase, and then how to use the new integration, etc. All right. Um, in the meantime, introduce yourselves in the chat. Already see some cool folks around here. Yeah, tell us where you're coming from. Tell us where you work, etc. I'm coming from Toronto. Uh, Thor is coming from an interesting place as well, but we'll get to that. Surya from India. Hello, Surya. Toronto too. Interesting. Right. Yeah. Before we begin, let's do a little quick housekeeping. So, um, there's going to be a Q&A section at the end. And we are going to use the Zoom Q&A little window to answer the questions. So if you drop it in the chat, just please remember, move it in the Zoom Q&A so that we'll just go through it as a list of questions. Of course, this is being recorded, and we will send you a recording, a link, if you want to go and rewatch it again. And yeah, at the end, we're gonna send you a survey to tell us how we did. Okay. So cool. Let's begin. My name is Lazar Nikolov. I work at Sentry as a DevRel, and I'll be your host today.
And I guess that's my cue. Hi, everyone. Yep. My name is Thor, or Torsten for the Germans amongst you. Yeah, I'm in developer relations at Supabase. We build Postgres-powered backend as a service.
Awesome. Hello, Thor. So this is going to be agenda for today. We're gonna do a little short overview of Sentry, how to set up Sentry in a Next.js project. Then we're gonna do a little overview of Supabase and how to set up Supabase. We're gonna trigger a database error and see what we get in terms of data, etc. And then, as I mentioned at the end, we're gonna do a little Q&A where we answer all your questions. All right, so let's do an overview of Sentry. So for those of you who don't know, Sentry is a dev-first application monitoring platform. This is what I like to say. It makes debugging and performance monitoring an easy game to play. All right, because it's built for developers, and you'll see later in the next slide. We'll talk about how it differs a little bit from the other tools out there. But yeah, it's built for monitoring code, not like system level changes, etc. It's actionable, right? It's not academic. It's actionable in meaning it tells you what you need to do rather than here's all the data that I captured. Right? So we want actionable and opinionated context. And then, of course, it's integrated in your workflow, in all of your apps. There's a Slack integration if you want to, get bothered with things at, I don't know, 1 a.m. at night when errors happen, or Jira to fill up your backlog for every error, etc. Yeah. So I mentioned that it's built for one audience, for developers. And as we know, the 4 pillars of IT, we got infrastructure, data, security, and code. And Sentry only cares about the code layer of the, of the 4 pillars of IT. So we only care about code level errors. We listen and react to performance problems. We also have test coverage insights with our CodeCov product. Whereas the other traditional other tools, they're more built towards monitoring infrastructure. They're built for ops, log aggregation, threat detection, etc. So this is how Sentry differs, and you'll see later when we start to play with it. This is where Sentry fits into your whole workflow. So it's mainly post-release, right? You're building an app, you push it to release. that's when that's where you must take a look at, keep an ear or keep an eye on your errors, on your performance bottlenecks, etc. Because you might have tested everything locally in your computer at the office with high-speed internet, but the users won't be in that situation, right? So you need field data. That is called lab data. You need field data. To get field data or RUM data, you need something like Sentry. So yeah, Sentry lives in post-release. It helps you monitor and ingest all the data that happens within your application, that performance and errors data. It helps you identify errors and performance issues, contextualize them, and it helps you resolve them quickly. We also, as I mentioned, we also have CodeCov in our tool belt, and CodeCov helps you build a test coverage, and it also integrates with the rest of Sentry, the rest of the products at Sentry. So when an error happens, you actually know whether it was covered by a test or not. And that changes things. When it comes to support, sorry, when it comes to support, there's like Sentry supports all of the most used, the most popular frameworks on mobile, desktop apps, backend, frontend, you name it. Okay, let's see how we can set up Sentry. I'm gonna show you a little project. So this project that I have right here, this is the Next.js subscription payments project. You can find it on Vercel's GitHub. And by the way, this is Thor's project. So we're gonna be using this project to demo both products. So I already have this cloned. Here it is. I haven't done anything. I haven't even run it, etc. So what I need to do to set up Sentry is use the Sentry wizard, which is npx at sentry/wizard at latest. So this is how we trigger the wizard, and we also need to -e Next.js. We need to tell it to install this in a Next.js application. So let's run this. There we go. Are you using the Sentry SaaS or self-hosted? I didn't mention Sentry is open source, and you can self-host it on your own server if you wanted to. So this wizard also takes into account if you're self-hosting Sentry on your own server. So let's pick the SaaS one. Do I already have a Sentry account? Yep. It's going to log me in, as you can see, and it's going to list all of my projects in my account. And the coolest thing about it is actually it's not cool, it's uncool, because I forgot to create a damn project. Let's actually do that. Let's go back here. This is Sentry. And in the projects panel, I'm going to collapse this. In the projects panel, I'm going to hit create project. Let's do a Next.js project, and let's call this, I don't know, Supabase-workshop. Okay, create project. Cool, there we go. We already have the command, but I'm just going to rerun it. So it takes, it refreshes the projects. Sentry says, do I have an account? Yes, I do. There's a window. There are multiple windows. I guess the demo gods are not with us today. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I should see, yeah, there we go. I should see Sentry-devrel, that's my organization, Supabase workshop. So this is my project. I'm gonna hit enter, and now it's just going to install everything. It's gonna install Sentry at Next.js. It's gonna set up some files. Do you want to route Sentry requests in the browser through your Next.js server to avoid ad blockers? Yeah, this is the thing. Since we're using Next.js, if we say yes to this, it's going to create an API endpoint where the client SDK is going to send everything that it captures. It's going to send it to the same domain. That way we can avoid CORS, we can avoid ad blockers blocking our script. So let's just go with that. Do you want to create an example page, Sentry example page, to test your Sentry setup? Sure, why not? Are you using a CI/CD tool? I'm going to say no, but what this is going to do is it's going to add an API token. So your CI/CD tool can actually use the API token to deploy your source maps. And there we go. Let's see what happened in the project now. So we're going to see multiple files, and I'm going to start with these three: the Sentry client config, the Sentry edge config, and the Sentry server config. So these three files, and let me just close the other one. These three files are basically how we configure Sentry. So there's the server, there's the edge, and there's the client. So what these do is, because we have different environments in Next.js, we have an edge environment, we have a server, depending on if we how we run this project, and then of course we have the client. In order to configure Sentry to properly instrument and capture data, we need a config file, and this is that config file. As you can see, the server and edge configurations, they're pretty small compared to the client. Well, because the client one also has an integration, which is replay. Replay is a DOM recorder that records the user's session, like what they see on the screen, whenever an error happens. And it sends that recording to you so that you can literally see what they were looking at when the error happens. You know, that is the contextualization. When error happens, we need to know pretty much everything. So should have brought my other keyboard. So those are the three files, okay? Then we have next.config.js, and this file is the ordinary next config, but the wizard actually modifies it a little bit. So here's the pure Next.js configuration object. And as you can see, the wizard actually wrapped with Sentry config. It plays that, and then everything else is Sentry-related configuration, which gets used by both by the server, edge, and also the client SDK, right? So we have the org, we have the project. Is it silent or not? This print logs for uploading source maps in CI/CD, etc. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is basically how you configure the top level Sentry SDK configuration. Cool. Then we have the instrumentation.ts, which is a file that Next.js and Vercel need for instrumentation. It's basically how Vercel and Next.js lets you tap into instrumenting your Next.js application with the tool that you want to use, which of course, in this case, it's Sentry. So this is how that marriage happens between Next.js's instrumentation mechanism and Vercel's like dashboard and backend with Sentry. Then we have the demo page, which is just a simple page. It has an SVG at the top, gets started by sending us a sample error. There's a button that triggers a fetch call, and that fetch call is defined here, throw new error. That's it. So this is just a quick way to test your setup. And of course, there's the global error JSX file. This is like a top level error boundary that catches all of the errors in the application that bubble up to it. And what it does is just basically capture exception and send it to Sentry, so we don't lose any exceptions. This is all. And this is all that the Sentry wizard gets you. And should we try to run this? Or maybe I'll leave it to Thor. I'm gonna leave it to Thor. So yeah,
yes, I can run it later.
Yeah. So this is how the wizard works. This is how setting up a Sentry project and installing the SDK and configuring the SDKs in your application is. It's literally just one. It's just literally just one command, which makes my job as a DevRel pretty hard, because that's all I needed to say when it comes to configuring and setting up Sentry in your Next.js application. So, yeah, Thor, I'm gonna leave it up to you and show us how things are looking from Supabase side.
Yes, thank you, Lazar. Yeah, actually, I was very pleased about the Sentry Next.js configuration wizard, specifically because nowadays with Next.js you have so many different environments. You have the client environment, the edge, the middleware, the server. It can get quite unwieldy, so it's really neat. It's a really neat tool. So we'll look at that and kind of what we need to do to extend it with Supabase in a little bit. But maybe, if you've used Supabase before, maybe you can put like a little green heart into the chat or something. Give us a little sign that you've come across Supabase already beforehand. But in case you haven't, let me give a very brief introduction to Supabase. So Supabase is an open source alternative to, backend as a service solutions, like, for example, Google's Firebase. So we're very inspired by, Firebase's developer experience, but we really wanted to bring that to Postgres and to, open source. And so Supabase is, fully open source, and kind of our tagline is that you can build your projects in a weekend and scale it to millions. And especially with like the recent AI, applications that are come out, some of these have literally, been built in 3 days and scaled to millions of folks sign up and using it. So it really is tagline. And we're also backed by companies like Y Combinator, Felicis, and Co2. So, that's basically what is powering our free tier for you at the moment. Now, what is Supabase? Just briefly, kind of looking at sort of the open source stack. So the foundation of Supabase is Postgres, an open source relational database management system that's been around for over 30 years now, very robust, and likely for 95% of the projects that you're building, it will be a good choice to use. It also is 100% Postgres, so it's just Postgres. Should you ever want to, for some reason, you can take it, you can export it, you can use literally all the things that are built for Postgres. In combination with Supabase, we give you a full Postgres instance. You can take it, you can host it yourself. But then the neat thing is that there are a bunch of things on top. So one of these things is authentication. So Supabase comes with an authentication server included. The neat thing is that this authentication server also uses your Postgres database, meaning that all the users that are signed up on, your project are actually just in your database on the auth schema. Now, the nice thing with this is that we can then combine this with a powerful tool that is called row-level security policies, where we actually auto-generate an API for you, which allows you to, for example, from the Next.js client side to actually query and interact with your database from the client side. And in this scenario, you need something like authentication to make sure that the user who is logged in is actually allowed to, access, retrieve, update, insert that information. So that is kind of how authentication fits in there. We also have edge functions. These are, global TypeScript functions. They are running on, again, an open source Dino edge runtime. Now, the reason we chose Dino is, again, it is open source, and it allows us to replicate that offline as well as online experience. So you can run, your entire Supabase stack locally on your machine as well if you're developing, somewhere on an airplane or a cruise ship where the Wi-Fi might not be so good. You can still do that with the Supabase CLI, and everything works locally on your machine as it would be on the hosted project. Now, something that's really cool as well with Supabase Edge functions. So Sentry has a Dino SDK also, and we can look at that later, an example. So we had like a nice little Dino Edge functions challenge with Sentry, where we're capturing error messages that you could trigger, and we'll actually look at the winners. So we'll have Postgres choose the winners later on. Then we have storage. So this is file storage specifically for, anything that is unstructured data. So, your video files, your images, your audio files, what have you. Now, the neat thing is, again, this sits on top of Postgres. So all the metadata about your files is actually stored in your Postgres database, again, on a storage schema, which means you can combine that again with authentication and RLS to actually lock down access to, storage objects as well. So you can see this theme here where, everything in itself can be used separately. So you can use like the storage, the authentication edge functions, all separately. But as you kind of put it together, it becomes a lot more powerful because all these separate tools in the stack integrate with each other. So that is the theme here. And then also, if you're coming from Firebase, you're very well familiar with kind of the real-time, experience. And so that was actually where sort of Supabase was born, kind of trying to replicate sort of this real-time experience on top of Postgres. It is really neat. It is a real-time service written in Elixir. If you're really into Elixir, again, it's all open source. You can dig into it. You can have a look. But even if not, you can use it very easily with the JavaScript SDK, for example, Supabase.js, and have kind of real-time, chats, as well as if you know like collaborative editing and like Notion or Google Docs, you can see who's online. So kind of all these different real-time services are part of that as well. And then lastly, become really, really relevant lately is vector databases. Now, what is really neat about Postgres in general is the extension ecosystem. So there is a vast, list of Postgres and really, really powerful Postgres extensions. One example would be PostGIS for managing geospatial data, location data, and now, with kind of the AI sort of uptick of AI applications and embeddings, you might have heard of that. You need a vector database. And so this is really cool where, again, with open source, we're actually able to basically turn Postgres into a vector database using an extension called pgvector. And here that works, with, OpenAI, Hugging Face, kind of your services that you might be using. And you can generate embeddings. You can store them in Postgres, again, in your database. And then you can perform kind of these similarity searches that you would do to sort of build an AI-enabled applications. Okay. So that was sort of the overview of Supabase. Now, again, I mentioned it's open source. I actually need to update this graph. It's just kind of showing you how sort of the community is embracing it. If you haven't started on GitHub yet, you can scan the QR code there and you can leave us a little star. And then maybe once we update the graph, it looks even more impressive. But yeah, fully open source. Now, since we're here under, amongst developers with our friends at Sentry, just a quick look at the architecture. So I mentioned kind of all the separate components. So Postgres at the bottom, really the foundation for everything. And then we have the different services kind of on top. And then we're working with Kong as sort of the API gateway to connect all kind of the different services together. And again, you can self-host this, you can run it locally on your machine with the CLI, or, you can just connect to a hosted Supabase project. Okay, fabulous. So let's look at setting up Supabase in, your Next.js project with Sentry. Okay, so I actually have a feature branch here. So, if you've, for example, worked with the Next.js subscription payments before, you can use that and you can dig into it. And maybe I can drop it into the chat here. Yeah, these were my little hearts. Oh, yeah, lovely. People are using a Supabase already. That's really, really nice. Thanks for dropping in the hearts. So here you can see the diff on GitHub if you're interested, kind of what it takes to sort of set up Supabase with Sentry in your Next.js project. And again, most of this is actually scaffolded by the Sentry wizard, which is really neat. And I didn't set up the ad blocking kind of feature here, so I don't have those routes. But what we specifically can look at are kind of the different client configurations here. And so it is pretty straightforward to do. Actually, maybe let's look at the package JSON, just kind of looking at the dependencies. So Sentry Next.js is what your Sentry Next.js setup wizard would add. And then we have a Sentry Supabase JS integration here. So that is something that you need to install as a dependency. And then as you basically go through, so Lazar showed you the different client, edge, and server configurations. This is scaffolded for you. Your DSN is already put in there. So what we then need to do is we need to add kind of the Supabase integration. And so we import that from our Supabase Sentry.js integration package. And then what we also need is we need the Supabase client. So here we can just import the type. So we just basically need to pass a reference to the Supabase client. We don't need to specifically instantiate the Supabase client. We can just say generally, okay, any Supabase client, please listen to kind of the requests there. And then we can just put this into the integrations here. You might be familiar with this, if you used Sentry beforehand. So we're setting up the Supabase integration with our Supabase client, and we can configure some options here. Now, one thing that's important to point out is that, if you're using Supabase with Next.js, the communication with your Supabase database just happens through the REST API. So Sentry actually by default will capture all the REST API requests. So what we actually need to do is, what the Supabase Sentry integration does is that it specifically tags these REST requests as queries, as database queries, as they are. So it makes it easier to sort of group them, tag them within your, Sentry project. But what this also means is you kind of need to deduplicate the requests being sent, right? And so what we basically need to do here is then we just need to pass into the integration. So here is this, in this case, it's a browser tracing integration. And then we can have this should create span for request method. And we're basically saying that we want to create spans for every request, except for the requests that are going to our Supabase URL and the REST endpoint. And so that is specifically the REST endpoint if we're looking back into the architecture here. So the REST endpoint is specifically that what goes to the auto-generated Postgres API to interact with all your tables. So these are the database queries. Now, all the other requests, so requests to the auth server or the real-time server or storage or functions, they are still normally tracked, through the Sentry integration as your normal kind of requests. So only the Sentry integration will specifically tag anything that goes to your Postgres kind of database as database queries. Pretty much the same thing for our Edge configuration. The only thing is that in the Edge runtime, the exclusion is here the Sentry integration for the Winter CG fetch. So Winter CG fetch is kind of the Winter CG is sort of the standard web APIs. So anything that sort of Edge functions, Dino Edge functions, the Vercel Edge functions as well are using the Winter CG fetch, the cloud, Cloudflare workers, kind of these. So any kind of these Edge function type environments will be sort of the in most cases the Winter CG Winter CG, and then specifically the fetch is what we're looking at. And again, We're excluding the rest here. And then lastly, for our server config, in this case, it is, I think the Italians would know how to pronounce this. I actually don't. My Italian is terrible, but I think it's actually just 11 in Italian. So this is somehow just the Node.js integration. I actually don't know exactly what the naming is. If anyone knows why the naming is this for the Node.js environment, let me know. But that's pretty much it. So that's all we need to do to get this up and running. And then once we deploy it, so what we can actually do is maybe if everyone here goes and racks up some requests. So I can maybe show you this here. So I have like my account. So basically, I can sign in, I can sign out. I have my account. I can sort of choose a plan. I can open the customer portal. So like when I open the customer portal, basically make a database request to kind of get sort of, which customer is logged in. So basically the authenticated user, what is their Stripe customer ID? And then here we're going to kind of the Stripe billing portal. We can subscribe to kind of subscriptions. We can manage the subscriptions. We can update our email address, kind of things like that. We can sign in and sign out. And so maybe what we can do is we can jump into our project here. We'll look at the Edge Functions challenge at the very end. But here, so we have our super subscriptions, 100% crash-free sessions, which is nice. So we can go in here. I only deployed this earlier today, so we don't have that much data for it yet. But maybe we just specifically look at the last 24 hours. And so what we can see is kind of some general overview charts here. We can look at all the issues that we have. So there were some here specifically for our query, returning multiple rows or not no rows. So this is a specific error that, if you're, for example, specifically saying, okay, I want a single, yeah, you can basically get like a single record, select that from the database, and then in that case where it actually isn't exactly one record being returned, then you get an error. But so let's jump into the queries here. So queries is specifically what, kind of for your database. And this is exactly what the Supabase Sentry integration does. It looks at all the REST API requests to your Supabase REST API, and then kind of groups them as your different queries, and actually tags them as database queries specifically. So, for example, we can look at maybe here our slowest running query is this one, which is the from subscriptions query. And so what we can see is okay, so we have this on the home page as well as on the /account page. So you remember actually in the scenario where I was going to my account page and I was opening, oh, sorry, that jumped the gun here. I was opening the customer portal. In that case, we're actually querying, I think, for the subscriptions, but maybe let's just go here to that. And so we can see some of the requests here. We can see kind of compared to average how they are performing. Maybe we can look at this one here, which has been slow. And what we can do is we can see kind of this waterfall here of like the different queries that are happening. So we can actually see that we're making two queries kind of in a row. So first, we're getting data from our subscriptions and then from our products. And we can dive into the details here. And what is really nice is, so basically this is what the integration does, is it tags this additional data where we can actually see our database schema. So this is on our public schema. We can see the SDK that was used to make the request. So in this case, maybe actually make it a bit larger. Then we can see that. So in this case, where we're using the Supabase server-side rendering specific package or SDK, which is specifically kind of for Next.js or kind of server frameworks. Then we can see that the table is our subscriptions table. We can see our project URL. We can actually link out to that because it's the URL. And then specifically, we can also look at the query. So we can see here, and this is basically pulled out from the request, that we're actually doing a select. And this is kind of a somewhat specific syntax to kind of PostgreSQL, where we're selecting everything. And then we're also joining. So this is quite neat with the Supabase JS SDK. You can also join on kind of related tables. So as long as you have kind of foreign key set up. So we're actually joining on prices as well as on products. And then we're filtering for the status of the subscription either being trialing or active. And so what this basically means is that, maybe we can optimize this query. We have kind of a bunch of joins in here. Maybe we don't need all that information. Maybe we shouldn't do select star. Oftentimes you can optimize things by actually doing a select only for kind of the things that you need. So yeah, you get really a lot of good insights here. And maybe we can look at issues. Should we look at issues? Yeah, so I think in this case, this is the issue that I mentioned already, but maybe let's see if we can, if we try to sign in with a user that doesn't exist. I think that, does that trigger an error, or maybe it actually doesn't trigger an error. Tester test, and we can just see. And so in this case, I think it might actually not be an error specifically. Maybe we can see if we look at so we're making a request here. Yeah, no, so it actually is a 200 okay. It just means that I think the payload is basically just yeah, it does have an error, but I think the SDK handles it because it's not treated as an error. But yeah, so basically, if you trigger an actual error, then this would show up in the issues, and you also get your emails sent and kind of all these things that you would expect from the Sentry integration. Cool. So that is Next.js. If you have any specific questions for Next.js, put them in the Q&A. One thing I wanted to quickly look at as well is the Supabase Edge function, so the Dino Edge function. So switching gears a bit here, nothing to do with Next.js anymore. But the neat thing is that so Sentry also has a Dino compatible SDK. And so what we can do is, Supabase JS also compatible with Dino. And then the way we do this is, again, we just pass in our DSN. We can pass in integrations here as well. So if we were using Supabase JS to, interact with our database within our Edge function, we could also pass in the Supabase integration here. But so this was specifically the challenge that we did. And the challenge was basically that you had to trigger an exception. And here we capture the exception with like Sentry.capture exception. And you basically had to trigger with your response, where was it? Catch. I think somewhere I was throwing, yeah. So basically, you had to correctly trigger this, and basically what we were checking for is the answer was like, what is Supabase not? So it's kind of a double negative. So basically, when you were replying, Supabase is not Postgres, that is a incorrect statement because Supabase is just Postgres. Um, so if you were sending Postgres, then we would trigger the exception with your Twitter handle. And so if we go back to our project, we can look at the edge function challenge. We can see here, this is quite fun. Ideally, this is not something that you want to see, right? Errors 14, transaction 0. But in this case, we were happy about every kind of error we saw. And I think maybe if we do this last 30 days, I actually don't know how long, the function was running, the challenge was running, I think roughly about that. We can then see we had a bunch of submissions here, which is really nice. We can look at the issues, and the issues are pretty much, in most cases, actually correct. The Twitter, so would throw kind of the Twitter handle as an exception. And so here again, you can see we're using Dino, we're using the Supabase Edge runtime. And yeah, you can kind of dig into the things here. We can see, this person here with their Twitter handle was participating. And now we were also then writing this into a Supabase table. And so what we can do here, you could submit it multiple times. And now I don't know if Per, so if you know Per Rich is the one of the creators of cal.com, fantastic open source calendar infrastructure software. And this was kind of around the time of like Supabase GA week. And if you remember, we had some beef with cal.com. So maybe Per really just wanted, to win a bottle. Actually, you could win a Sentry or Supabase bottle. But so the neat thing is, we don't really know if Per actually submitted this. But what we can do is instead of order by count, so Postgres has a random function, and this is how we let Postgres choose our winners. So we just run this, and we'll basically just pick the first 10 in here. So basically, yeah, Lucas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, obviously we skip myself. 8, 9, 10. Well, congrats to all of you who participated. Postgres wants you to stay hydrated. And if you remember, actually the Sentry bottle looks a lot cooler. So we need to figure out who wins the Sentry bottle and who wins the Supabase bottle. But yeah, stay tuned for this. Thanks for using Supabase, using Sentry, using it together. You can really build great things and build things that don't break, or at least you can quickly catch it and fix it. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in. And I'll hand it back over to Lazar for kind of the wrap up and the Q&A. Thanks.
All right, that was a really cool presentation, Thor. Thank you. All right, so we got some stuff in the QA, but I got one more shared directly with the team. Let me just bring back my UI here. So someone curious noticed the performance modules, Thor, in your presentation, and they wanted to know a bit more about them. And those are here. So the performance modules, let me just answer this really quick and then we'll get into the other questions. These are like modules that help give you specific data. And the store also demo, this is the queries module that tells you how your DB queries are performing and in what page they get executed from, etc. So you'll know which pages are affected by them. This is the request module. It basically tells you all the HTTP requests that are happening in your application. On what page, what is the 400s rate, what is the 300s rates, etc. Web vitals basically tells you all of the web vitals for each of your pages. As you can see here, you click a page and you see the web vitals, etc. Screen loads is for mobile apps. For example, if you're running, I don't know, Android or iOS, it basically tells you per release what is the how long it takes for the screen to load. Um, Upstart is pretty much the same, but it's for the whole application, not for the screen. And we got resources at the end, which tells you all of the resources that your pages are pulling in and how heavy they are. And we're talking about JPEGs, PNGs, SVGs, JavaScript modules, etc. So yeah, these are the performance modules that we currently have in Sentry. Yeah, now it's time for the rest of the questions. Let's check them out. Um, One question for Brett. What information, insights, and workflows do Sentry support beyond what's in the Supabase Edge Functions dashboard? Can you trace from frontend to Edge Functions to database? How would you create a span for a database call inside an Edge function? Yeah, so I can answer this. Yeah. Yes, Sentry supports distributed tracing, that's called. And what you do is basically you create for each of the specific actions like HTTP calls, etc. A transaction is automatically created for you, but you can also do it manually. So, for example, if you wanna trace or instrument a specific operation flow, you can create a manual transaction that is going to create a trace ID for you, and sorry, create a trace, and then using the start span and end span, you're basically instrumenting parts of your app, whether that's like database calls or function executions or other HTTP calls. You can attach all of those to them, and they're gonna show up in a nice trace view, something like Thor demoed when he showed that diagram. So yeah, whatever they are, even if they're at the edge, if the trace ID is present, it's automatically going to get picked up. And if you're using the Sentry SDK on the client side, it's going to send the trace ID automatically for you. So the edge function, when the edge function receives the trace ID header, it's just going to hook into that existing trace and add the spans over there. So yeah. And we got the next question by Diego. What is the best way to limit what is or isn't sent to Sentry so as not to overload your Sentry limit? So yeah, there are a few ways. One of them is like the ignore pattern. You can go into the let me try to find this Sentry ignore errors, ignore pattern. Yeah. And this is for JavaScript. You can see all the rest of the stuff. I'm gonna zoom in. So you can ignore specific errors in the SDK init, or you can tap into the before send to see the event and to either delete it, not send it, etc. What else was there? Or like hints, etc. Before send, before breadcrumb. Now there we go. You can filter out specific stuff. But if you just wanna lower the if you want to lower the rate that is being sent, that is the traces sample rate or the traces sampler, and also the ignore errors. This combination is basically going to allow you to cherry pick which errors get sent, which they don't get sent. Maybe there's like some errors from browser extensions. You want to filter them out. You can use this. Okay. And that was all the questions in the Q&A. Come on, give us some
Yeah,
more.
so sorry, I answered one of them with a link.
Mhm.
It was could you speak to open telemetry compatibility across both platforms? And sorry, I didn't realize when I typed the answer, it then moves the question to answered. So I only yeah, so we provide some Prometheus compatible like Grafana endpoints, so you can pipe it, for example, into Grafana. So I think that sort of might be answering kind of from the Supabase side.
Yeah, and also for Sentry side, there is an open telemetry uh instrumentation support enabled. Depending on what SDK you're using, you can see that there are, yeah, you can use the OTel instrumenter and route the events and the measurements back to Sentry.
Cool.
One question for Chris: how is SvelteKit support for all of this? Do we have SvelteKit support?
Yeah, surely must be, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. We do have SvelteKit support. So yeah, it should be, if it's JavaScript, and it should
Yeah,
be
right.
all supported. Yeah.
In the end, it's another Vercel funded JavaScript project, no?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, Prometheus not open telemetry. Yeah, that's fair. There is, I think, there is a GitHub discussion open somewhere about open telemetry specifically. So maybe you need to dig into that. Yeah, if you Google that, I think you can find the discussion and you can kind of add on to that. I think for now, basically, we're kind of just providing the Prometheus compatible stuff. Yeah.
Okay, well, there we go. Yeah. If you don't have any more questions, I guess it's time to wrap up for today. Oh, there we
Ah,
go.
shared edge functions. Initialize Sentry in shared edge functions folder and import in others. That's not really a question, that's a statement. Did it work or did it not work?
We got the other
Um,
one from Diego, which is lost signal, don't know if the question was missed or answered. Yeah, let me do it again. So there are multiple ways to filter out, oh, there we go, events. The one that you're looking for is the ignore errors. So using ignore errors, you can like grab the error and add the pattern, so the Sentry SDK doesn't send it. There is a way to how to cherry pick specific errors and prevent them from sending. But then the other method is to lower your traces rate, so your traces rate doesn't send that much percentage of your errors. Yeah. Is your recommendation to send it all at first and then filter which are the most useful? I would leave it. I would leave it as, send everything, because you don't know at the beginning what you want to filter out unless you do. Right? But then as you keep an eye on the errors and the stuff happening in your application, and as you figure out where those errors are coming from, you're basically going to evolve the ignore errors patterns, and ignore any errors that are coming from browser extensions, etc. So yeah, just start with everything, and then as you figure out where the errors are coming from and you're not interested in those errors, just filter them out. I was trying to initialize Sentry in the shared edge functions folder and import edge functions, but in Sentry it couldn't map errors to the exact edge functions code. Okay, hmm, I don't know. I feel
yeah,
like I need more context.
yeah, I think so. Basically, in edge functions, you can, kind of pull out sort of code that is used across multiple functions, into like a shared folder and then import from there. So I think they were just putting the initialization of basically the Sentry SDK, Dino SDK, into like this shared folder and then import it into their individual edge functions. But it sounds like then they weren't able to distinguish between the functions. So I think we probably might need some more context here. So I think, Harsh, if you could open an issue on, I think maybe the Sentry Dino SDK repository, um, maybe with some screenshots or some details, then we could look into that further.
Yeah. Or you can like go to the Discord server and drop the question there. Awesome. All right, so I guess we're at time. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Tor, for the amazing demo. So
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good
yeah,
fun.
this was fun. Yeah, this was fun. All right, y'all. So yeah, thank you everyone. We're gonna send you some feedbacks. We're gonna send you the recording, all these things. So and I'll see you in the next one. Right. Take care.
Bye bye.